He is 93 years old. He's already got 54 national and 2 world championship titles to his name, and uniquely, he didn't even start racing until he was 61. So he won all those titles after basically he was retired. Hello and welcome back to another episode of Off the Back. I am Rook, the North American editor here at Cycling Weekly, and today I'm joined by our tech editor, Andy.
Hey Rook, how you doing?
Good. And our news and features writer, Meg.
Hello.
How's it going? How's hot Britain?
Too hot.
It
We're
is
just
hot.
saying, like, we're starting to malfunction over here. Gonna power through.
The other part where weather will be a huge topic this week is Unbound, where everyone's been looking at their weather apps because rain means mud and mud means disaster. Having been at Unbound several times, I can tell you mud is absolutely no fun. Unbound mud is unlike anything else. And there, the weather forecast shows rain, or a chance of rain for the next, 4 or 5 days. Thunderstorms and rain. Mud could be happening at Unbound, and that is the topic of this week in general. The biggest week in gravel cycling is in Kansas. It's literally the middle of nowhere, United States, and this is where we have the biggest race in gravel cycling. It's a 200-mile race for the elite, and there will be 5,000 people racing everything from 25 miles to 350 miles this weekend. Now, you guys live in the UK. We in the US, we're all sold on this gravel idea. What do you make of gravel and or the Unbound hype?
Well, my first thought is I'm trying to get a sense of the scale. I've never been to the event. Emporia is only, I looked it up beforehand, only 24,000 people. So what is it like? Is it like when the Tour de France takes over Briançon, or is it bigger? Does it feel more like there are parts of small towns in France where you can avoid the Tour de France if the Tour de France is in town? Can you avoid it in Emporia?
Absolutely not. Yeah, no, it's a tiny town. It's a university town, and school's out. So a lot of people actually stay in the dorms of the university. And like, there's 5,000 racers, but then add to it their family, their support crew, the media, sponsors. There's a big expo, and this town just like doubles in size. In fact, a lot of locals will leave and put their house up on Airbnb because there's not enough hotels, not enough restaurants, not enough of anything because the town is so small. And I, for example, this year, I was too late to book it, and like I think I waited until the first week of January to book my accommodations, and there was none. So I'm having to stay an hour outside of Emporia because it just gets overrun, and you definitely cannot avoid it at all. I'd say within a 350-mile radius, you're gonna encounter cyclists and the event. And for Emporia, which is like a very small town, it's actually been a really big economic boom. So there's some locals that aren't stoked on this, obviously, but in generally they are because it is how they make their money every year.
It is fascinating. Like, we're to some extent from the outside looking in over here, in that gravel fever is yet to fully embrace the UK, but we're getting there. Like, I did a ride the other week, and I was with a few mountain bikers, like 2 of whom used to edit like this kind of massive downhill free ride magazine, and they always swore off gravel cycling. So cringe, never gonna do it. And we did this ride, and they were like, oh my god, maybe gravel riding is cool. And for me, that was like the moment I was like, okay, right, if gravel cycling's got there, this is it, new wave. But I'm so fascinated by the kind of size of Unbound as well, and the amount of love that seems to be out there for it. Like, why do you think it is so loved, and kind of how has it grown in the past 20 years?
Yeah, I mean, they call it the race that everyone loves to hate. Everyone loves going there. It's the race that will make or break your career in gravel cycling. And at the same time, people love to rag on it, because the conditions are awful. Like I said, the town is too small. There's so many things that people like to criticize, and yet they come out year after year. And what's cool is that this started as this like offbeat idea with like 37 riders, and 20 years ago, and they just took off and decided to ride 200 miles on these awfully maintained roads on bikes that were probably not quite suited for it. And people are like, this is a unique challenge. It's different than any kind of road racing or whatever. And so next year it got bigger and bigger. And then I think there's just been so many factors of road racing dying in the United States, traffic fatalities going up, all these things that are pushing people to want to challenge themselves in a new way. There's also something about millennials where they just like to go faster and further than anyone has gone before. You see this in running, you see this everywhere. People are what's a 5K anymore? You want to do a marathon, you want to do an ultra marathon. And I think in bike racing, and that's very evident in Emporia when you're there and you ask people, what race are you doing? And they're like, oh, I'm only doing the 100. And they're saying that as though that 100 miles is nothing. You should be ashamed. How dare you only do the 100? And I think, it's just all these factors combined made it this ultimate challenge. And I think as gravel has grown, as the sport has professionalized, this continues to be the race where you can make or break your career. And we actually have a piece going up this week about all the 5 winners of Unbound, and they're all echoing that sentiment that this race changed their career. It allowed them to have a professional cycling career, or it allowed them to come back to cycling after having had a road racing career before.
The distance, the 350, I mean, that just feels completely alien to me. I've never done 350 miles in a day on a bicycle. I wouldn't want to. Is that the main? That's not the main event. The 200 miler, I believe, is the main event. Could you tell us a bit about how that works and who's actually taking part in the 350? Because that, as you said, the millennials love that sort of stuff. But that is insane. That's a big day out.
It is a big day. Having done that in 2023, it is a very big day. I think 26 hours, 4 of which were literally hiking. So yeah, that's a huge day. But the 200 is that sweet spot between it is crazy, but it's also nowadays they're doing it in these insane times and averaging upwards of 20 miles per hour for 200 miles. But the 200 mile has become the elite race. It draws riders from all over the world, and we see Olympians, former World Tour riders, gravel pros, and just about anyone who wants to challenge themselves in a new way. I've loved seeing some of the World Tour pros come over, like Mate Mohoric, Greg van Avermaet, and even Peter Sagan a couple years ago, and challenge themselves in that way. They've done grand tours, and they're like, how hard can this be? And most of them, I will say, kind of leave with their tail tucked between their legs because it is that hard. And I think that 200 mile is just long enough where it's still doable and at a decent clip, but it's long enough to where you have to really plan out your nutrition, train for it for a long time. And because even at the World Tour, you don't routinely do 200 miles in one go. In fact, you never do. So it is long enough to where it's a challenge, but not so long that, you have to go more than a full day.
And obviously there's lots of pros that now travel to it and seem to love the appeal for some reason. Perhaps you could elaborate on that. But I wondered why Americans seem to win it so often.
Well, it is an American race. There is no road racing. So if you want to get that top tier competition, you're gonna, well, I shouldn't say there's no road racing. Road racing has been on a steady decline, and so a lot of especially it started off with a lot of World Tour riders retiring and taking on a new challenge. I like to call it the off ramp from pro cycling. It allows you to continue living that pro cycling life for a little bit longer, just on a new surface, with a little bit more relaxed lifestyle, and without the pressures of World Tour racing. Of course, this is changing since the pressure is now dialed up with Unbound being so important. There's huge money to be had, huge sponsorships on the line. And so now World Tour racing is kind of that same pressures you now see in gravel. But yeah, it started off with people like Ted King and Ian Boswell and Pete Stetina and all these former American road racers turning into gravel. And for a long time, this was of no interest to European riders. And then in the last 5 years, we've seen more non-American winners than American winners as gravel has kind of boomed around the globe. So that's been really interesting because I think now there's a lot of there's the core riders from the Lifetime Grand Prix facing, and a lot of them are domestic, facing the international talent who come out to see what they can do. And that in and of itself has become a big storyline. The 350 is now contested by those riders like Pete Stetina and Ted King, who are, they went from World Tour racing to gravel racing to now ultra endurance cycling. It's kind of this trend of trying to find your adventure in the next level. And as the 200 feels more and more like a peloton, like a World Tour race, they're like, we've done that. Like, I know what that feels like. I'm not interested in that. So then they're taking it a next step. And we've seen Lachlan Morton. He won the 200. He then did the XL. This year, he's back to the 200. And it just, that ultra distance, Ted King, same thing. He's won the 200, then did the 350. Like, it's just the next big adventure.
You mentioned earlier about the kind of possibility of thunderstorms and torrential rain, and that sounds a lot like the conditions that you rode in back in, was it 2023 that you did? Yeah. And you, in the amazing piece that's on Cycling Wiki, anyone can read, you described like how the mud had like kind of turned to concrete in like the drivetrain, and like having to use a paintbrush stick to like get out all of the excess mud. What kind of unexpected kind of like tech tools do you reckon that we might see this year in addition to a paint tool?
Yeah, I'm actually going to grab it right here. New development this year. For the people that are watching us on YouTube, they can actually see this. So all the riders at Unbound this year will get this little tool from Wheels Manufacturing in their little kit, their rider bag, and it's basically a mount with a like plastic scraper, which is basically like the paint sticks of old, but now it attaches neatly to your bike, and on the other side has another clip, and you can 3D print anything you want to clip in there, which is kind of a neat development. I definitely carried 2 paint sticks during the XL, 1 paint stick during every other event, and that wasn't enough that XL year. They definitely broke. And the mud is just so thick. I don't even know how to explain it. It's like this peanut butter, gritty, concretey, like mud, and when that gets everywhere, I mean, it's sheared through my seat stays. I've seen many derailleurs getting ripped off. Like it's just so thick, and so people will bring a water bottle specifically for hosing down that drivetrain, paint sticks, or like these plastic scrapers. I actually asked if e-pumps were becoming more common, because CO2 cartridges are at a premium this time of year in Emporia. Everyone goes out and buys one because you're going to have several flats, and e-pumps are not becoming a thing for pro riders, but definitely for the amateurs. And then you're going to find anything having to do to prevent flats, so inserts, double the amount of sealant. People in the past, they would use aero bars, but they've banned them. Let's see, what else are you going to see at Unbound? Suspension. You see a lot of suspension forks, because it is a long ways to just be exposed, your neck, your elbows, your shoulders to that kind of vibrations. But yeah, the beauty of Unbound is that it doesn't fall under the governance of UCI rules, so they can kind of be a bit more flexible with their setups. And as a story today was that we're going to see the last year's winner, Cam Jones, ride a Scott bike, a prototype bike that Scott says will never make it to market, with 32-inch wheels. And yeah, Andy, you have a lot of opinion about 32-inch wheels.
Here, if it's not going to make it to market, that's all good. I think we covered this on the last podcast. I'm not a tin hat wearing technology denialist. If there's a proven advantage to these things, then fair enough. We've seen a bit of field testing, 5 or 6 studies. The average averages out at a 2.4% advantage. That is below the noise floor. You can't test a 2.4% advantage over a 50-mile thing with 5 riders and call it an advantage. It's a good hypothetical, it's a good hypothesis. You could theorize that you've got an advantage there, and that certainly does point to an advantage, but there's not been any testing yet. We've got tons of tires, and now Scott have made these 2 bikes for Cam Jones and Robin, and they're obviously going to say they're really excited about riding them. We'll have to wait and see. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. The problem is, Robin is 5'11", 5'10", and then Cam Jones is 6 foot. And if anybody wants to spend 1 second looking at the head tube, you'll see the packaging problem. And 3 of the 3 people on this call, 2 people cannot ride that bike in their size, and it will never be available in our size. So I don't know. The bike trade seems to be trying to tie itself in knots.
Do you think he's going to have an advantage, though? Not like Cam needs any more advantage. That man is so very strong. But he says that the bike makes you feel like you're levitating over the surface. And that he's almost scared at how fast he'll be going, specifically in cornering. Explain the benefit there when it comes to cornering and having 32-inch wheels.
Well, in theory, there's a rollover advantage. Right, so when 29ers came in, there were people like me saying, "Oh, this is rubbish. This is silly," and it was established reasonably quickly that there was a rollover advantage in mountain biking, where there's big ruts and things like this. You don't roll over objects on a gravel course. Your tire deforms and absorbs them, and it's not the same. It's not the same problem. If you take a UCI gravel event, that's obviously very clear cut. There's no rollover there. There may be at Unbound. I don't know what sort of single track sort of style sections there are, but there isn't really a rollover advantage. You've got a taller wheel on the same axle, so it's slightly weaker. So steering wise, the wheel's going to be less laterally stable. So steering, which is the most important thing a front wheel does, is likely to be worse. So the feedback there is interesting, worthy of investigating why. But in theory, that front wheel's just worse at being a front wheel. And then you've got an impact on aero. You've got much more frontal area given over to the tire, given over to this thing. And then you've got a packaging problem where you haven't got much of a steerer in the bike at all, and you can't make one for anybody smaller than 5'9", say. So I don't know. It feels to me like extra weight, extra mass in the wheel, extra weight, less aero, and this packaging problem that means the mainstream bike trade will struggle to deliver that in a way that works for lots of people. It's just going to make everybody's lives a bit more complicated, I think. But we'll see. I mean, we'll eat my words. Cam Jones, if anyone's going to win it, could be Cam Jones. If he's got a faster wheel in, will we know if it's Cam Jones or will we know if it's the wheel? I don't know.
The other thing we're going to see tech-wise at Unbound are a bunch of new bikes. We already have a heads up on what's coming. You guys, being the audience, will have to wait, but we're very excited to see some prototypes. As always, there will be, new bikes being launched at the event. And there's always lots going around at Unbound. It's definitely become both the testing ground, but also the launching pad for a lot of new gear, which makes Unbound even more exciting. Because when else do you get to test product for 200 straight miles of intense racing? And then people stories. These are always my favorite from Unbound. And one of my favorite stories is a man named Fred Schmid. He is 93 years old. He's already got 54 national and 2 world championship titles to his name. And uniquely, he didn't even start racing until he was 61. So he won all those titles after basically he was retired. And what makes him so cool is that he's done Unbound many times. He's done the 100-miler 3 times, and he's been chasing that 200-mile finish year after year. I caught up with him last year as it was his 3rd attempt, I believe, to finish the 200-miler. He had to bail once again, and so this year I saw that he was on the start list again, gave him a call, and he said that once he got to Emporia, he decided he was going to drop down to just a 100-miler and have fun, which at 93 I think is no less impressive. But more so than his achievements, what I love about him is that, again, he's 93 years old. He still drives long distances. He still rides his bike all the time, including at this very difficult event, and he still texts emojis and all. He's so sharp, both physically and mentally. And the secret there obviously is staying fit and in his case riding his bike. And I think that was one of my favorite stories from Unbound in recent years, and again this year. Maybe I'll be so lucky to be this fit and still ride 100 miles at 93.
It's a kind of wonderful thing. Perhaps that talks to Unbound's appeal in the sense that anyone can participate, and that really is a good example of it, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like the marathon, I feel like, of racing, right? In general, gravel, the beauty of this is that you can line up and do the same course as the pros do, and you don't get to do that in road cycling. You know, you don't get to line up an hour before the tour gets going. You won't be passed, you know, by the pro peloton on a road race, and that is really cool about Unbound, is that you'll be on course the same time as everyone else, and you'll do the same course or stretches of the same course, and that's really neat. Yeah.
I also love what he'd said to you about one year having decided again not to do the full 200 after feeling like the 130 miles lying in wait for him wasn't intriguing enough. I loved that. And it just, I mean, even just from your article, like his spirit seemed very, I don't know, you got a real sense of who he was as well. And like, I think, yeah, like you say, like the cycling's kept him young, but also his outlook on life, I suppose, as well. And like just that like commitment to being outdoors and pushing himself and his mind and his body as well. It just, yeah, it's like a fantastic person to know.
He is. And it's not even about like the competition or anything per se. He's just like, he likes to go out and look at ranches, you know? He's like, this is a beautiful ranch and I'm out on my bike and what a great day. And he's just, you know, happiest when he's outdoors, and making that a priority in his life, just to take care of his body, he said has really made a difference. Like he's seen a lot of his peers fall ill or struggle with, you know, dementia and everything at his age, and he's been lucky not to face any of that. The women's Unbound XL title defender is Heather Jackson, and she just ran the 250-mile Cocodona trail running race, and now she's going to race 350 miles of gravel. Like this race just finished 2 weeks ago, which is just mad, and I love that she's just that much of a machine. She's a former triathlete, then took on gravel racing, and you know, after several years of doing the 200 miler, she wanted a bigger adventure, and then the 350 last year, and then this year she's going even bigger. Like I said, she just finished a 250-mile running race, and now she's heading to XL. And then after that, she has her biggest goal of the season yet, which is the Tour Divide, which is a 2,745-mile unsupported mountain bike race. So XL is just a little blip in between two of her big goals this year, and that's impressive on a whole nother level.
And how long, the 250-mile running race, can we go back to that? I sort of accidentally jumped ahead there, I think, mentioning the wear and tear, but the how many days is that over?
I'm trying to remember, because I think they obviously they sleep. It was like 56 hours.
56 hours running.
So it's like slightly over 2 days?
Wow.
Yeah.
It's just absolutely mad.
Yeah.
This is what routinely fascinates me about people who are able to mentally get themselves through challenges like that. I mean, you did Rook on that ultra bike ride. Like, it's so beyond what I've ever done that I'm so in awe of anyone who has the mental and physical capabilities to be able to do something like that. It's incredible.
I mean, the 350 was mostly like fun in a weird way, because it's less hard. I mean, it was hard on my body, but I've also done a 50K trail running race. And back to your point, Andy, I was destroyed, like absolutely destroyed after running an ultra marathon. So doing 250 miles, the damage that does to your body, I can't even imagine, to then turn around and get ready. And what I loved about the interview that the feature that we ran about Heather, is that she just said that, you know, the legs will have it in them or not. Like, that's the attitude of like, well, they know what to do or they won't have it. Who knows? And so her prep these last 2 weeks, besides recovering, has been to just get dialed on the bike, get comfortable, and that's control the controllables and see how it goes. I would love for her to do it again and to take that win and just prove that she's capable. And I don't know, I just think that is next level impressive. Because we're looking at the pros race, right? And like, oh, wow, they're so fast. And the difference between the XL and the 200-mile pros race is that the XL is fully unsupported. There are different gas stations along the course, about, I think, 5 or 6, something like that. I don't remember. But there's gas stations that anyone can use, just like, you know, anyone in the world can just go into a gas station, buy whatever they need. So that's allowed on the XL. But you're not allowed to have any support whatsoever. No water stops. No one can hand you anything. Like people within the race can, you know, your competitors. But you can't have support crews anywhere else. Whereas the 200 miler is nowadays not fully supported, but like you have 3 points where your team, your crew can get you a new pack, get you new, you know, tires, wheels, whatever, get you food, whatever you need. And that's become almost like an F1 pit stop. Like they're literally picking up the rider and their bike, changing whatever they need on the rider, on the bike, and moving them on. Like it's literally like an F1 pit stop, which I wrote an article about that on Cycle Wiki. You can find that also, how I do not like that, because it defeats the spirit of gravel, where it's unsupported. It's an adventure. You're on your own to fix your flats and to make sure you have enough nutrition, all that stuff. And so the XL kind of keeps that alive, and that you are fully unsupported. You're on your own for, you know, however, 26 hours of fueling yourself and mechanicals and everything. And that is still the adventure. And yeah, that's a whole nother element that you have to control. And I'm kind of bummed that you don't see that as much in the 200 race anymore.
The age thing, just coming back to 93-year-old chap again, the with these ludicrous endurance efforts, you are fighting your mind sometimes. Like there's sort of like quite a lot of older or age group Ironman world champions that are a little bit older, and they've just been in the game a bit longer and just learned to, I suppose, tell their legs to shut up and just get on with the task in the way that you just described. The lady's legs after her run. You know, the legs will just do what the legs are going to do, and I'll just keep my head on it. It's sort of interesting, and I just love the idea that whilst we often talk on here about Paul Sexas and various other people that are, you know, 18 or 19 and working at the highest level, this endurance stuff has got real legs, I suppose, isn't it? When we get a little, you can just, if you can avoid the injuries, and the injuries come from running and heavier impact sports, then you can just keep going with the cycling. It's really cool.
Yeah, I mean, I asked Fred, I was like, what is your secret? Like, what tips do you have for, you know, this longevity in life? And he was kind of like flabbergasted. He's like, I don't know. What kind of tips would I have other than just keep pedaling? And that, I love that's so simple. And that's all it takes, really, is to just keep pedaling. Don't stop being active. Don't stop doing the things that you love. And yeah, that's the real secret to being 93 and still riding 100 miles at Unbound.
Amazing.
All right, so let's move on to non-Unbound stories. The biggest stories on the web this past week. These are the stories that were most well read by our readers. They ran the gamut. The top story was actually a series that we launched. It's a When to Replace It series, in which we explore when one should replace common cycling products like helmets, apparel, chamois, and various moving parts on your bike. The first edition was written by Greg Kaplan, and it was all about helmets. We did some research on when manufacturers and consumer protection agencies say that you need to replace your cycling helmet, and what actually happens to cycling helmets to make them degrade in the first place. Now, it turns out that the lifespan is a lot shorter than people would like. If you read the comments, people weren't pleased to hear that. You should probably change your helmet every 3 to 5 years. And this is what manufacturers, but also consumer protection agencies say. So it's not just marketing spiel. What degrades a helmet is various things. It's sweat, UV rays, obviously like wear and tear if it hits the ground, and also chemicals. So sunscreen, bug spray especially are detrimental to a helmet. Now, 3 to 5 years, it's short lifespan. I don't know about you guys. I looked at my wall of helmets and was like, ooh, I should probably, replace some of these. But our readers in the comments were not pleased to hear that news, and I was wondering what you thought. Do you think that 3 to 5 years is marketing spiel?
Well, do you want to go first, mate? Because this might set me off on another rant.
Yeah, I mean, I guess anything that's designed to keep you safe is worth investing in, isn't it? And you can get, I've never spent more than £100 on a helmet, and if that's the amount of cycling I do, the returns on that is just enormous. And especially because I love mountain biking as well, so like so much of it is just like accidentally chucking your helmet in the back of a van and it rumbling around for the next 20 minutes or something until you reach the trails, and then just putting your hand, your fingers in your ears, la 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 la, it'll be fine. Yeah, it does. It's so worth it, and especially like because I live in London, and there's so many people who don't wear helmets. I mean, this is another separate topic, I suppose. But yeah, I just don't think it doesn't take much. And it can save you an awful amount. So yeah, that's my take on it. But yeah, I think I'm probably quite good at replacing my helmets I'd say every 5 years, the end of the spectrum.
Yeah, I also was reminded of cleaning my helmet, which I'm not very good at. I mean, I'll clean the liners and stuff, I'll throw them in the washing machine, but like some of the experts in this article made some good points about like you should be washing your helmet and you should be rinsing it and keeping it not in the back of a car where it's exposed to heat all the time. There's so many factors that will make it degrade, and one person made a very good analogy with the wetsuit. So if you're surfing, they ought to say don't leave it out in the sun, right? Because it'll degrade, and the helmet's no different. Like you leave it out in some place hot or just the UV rays alone will break down the glue that keeps the helmet together. So it's not so much the foam itself that will break it down, but it's the glue and the individual parts that keep the helmet together.
Yeah, I would have thought that was coming back to the question: is this marketing spiel telling you to replace your helmet? No, it's not. Like as you said, you can leave it on the back seat of your car and it'll get baked, and it's just glue that is safe on EPS, polystyrene. This stuff is it's all got to retain the structure and the integrity of the thing, and we bash them around. If I take mine on a plane, I strap it to the outside of my bag. When I get to the hotel, it falls off the hotel bed. I drop it at the cafe stop. If you think about the recurring impacts that your helmet goes through, the amount of times it gets thrown away in the luggage, thrown around in the luggage hold of the plane or in the back of your car, and then you cover it in sun cream, bug spray, and all these chemicals and take it out in the sun. If you're not replacing it every 3 to 5 years, you're not taking your safety seriously. I just sort of called to mind, I bought a Fox full face helmet once for mountain biking. I spent €380 or something, €350. It was pretty expensive, and I wrecked it on the first run on the first day. And obviously, I never wore it again, which is a bit painful. But generally, they're going to last a long time. And I've reviewed some really good ones this year. An HJC, which was brilliant, really, for the price. It's about £100 cheaper than the Giro and the sort of top brand ones. But one I keep coming back to is a Van Riesel helmet that I've got. I've got the 30 quid version. The 50 quid version comes with MIPS. I want to replace that every 2 or 3 years. And at that sort of price, you certainly can afford to. Would you want to replace a £350 helmet every 5 years? Probably not. If you've saved up and you want Tadej's helmet, then I can understand why people do that. But you cannot hang on to it forever. It's there to protect your bonds, and you need to. It's going to take a lot of Teddy, and it's got a short shelf life.
Next, I would like to talk a little bit about some good news. Normally, the best stories on the website are bad stories, negative news, brands going under. This was a twofer in that regard, in that it's a story about a brand closing and coming back to life, and that is Paragon. Now, Paragon is Paragon Machine Works was a brand, a manufacturer of smaller parts that you see primarily on hand welded bikes, titanium and steel bikes. They make bottom bracket shells, they make dropouts, they make all the small parts that you can build a bike around. And they announced they were closing and left some of the it left a big part of the industry hanging until this week. News broke that their assets were bought by a company right here in Portland, actually, First Hand Frame Building. They have bought the intellectual property, the brand assets, the manufacturing tools, everything to preserve the brand's component catalog, and they will continue making that. Andy, explain to us exactly what Paragon is and why this was such big news.
Well, it's kind of big news in frame building. And if you've got a metal bike of any sort, stainless steel, steel or titanium, and it's made by a bespoke maker or a custom builder, the chances are you've got a Paragon Machine Works part on your bike. They make really beautiful machined head tubes with reinforcing rings built in. They make auto bottle bosses. They make drop outs. They make bridges, integrated seat clamps, just the little parts, the small things that make your custom bike look kind of pretty. And those things are available from the Far East, and they're reasonably cheap. You know, you can buy bosses for, you buy them in volume, pay pennies for them really, in mild steel, and they're a relatively simple part. Paragon have always been at the top of their game in terms of machining these little parts, and they almost care about the little bits that nobody else seems to really fuss around. And some of the reasons why our custom bikes are beautiful and brilliant is because Paragon exists. They've been around for 43 years, making really, really beautiful things, really precisely. And it was a real shame when they went. It's certainly a symptom of where we're at in the bike trade at the moment. You know, these higher end bikes, they're selling less of them. So Paragon are presumably selling through less parts. Tariffs and what have you may also have a bearing on it, but it's been tough for them. And we saw this news that they'd gone, and that's real sad news in the frame build as well. But the fact that they're back and appear to now be in the hands of a frame building supply company with a decent amount of inventory and presumably a decent amount of cash means that they'll probably be around for a lot longer, which is kind of brilliant.
Yeah, I'm not sure if they will continue under the Paragon name. Who knows? But this supplier, First Hand, is very interesting in general. Their building facility right now is not even open yet here in Portland. They have like a supply and dealer part of it, but then the part that they're opening later this year is actually a frame building school, which is really cool. So they're going to teach the trade to new people, and that's needed. I think we saw some other frame building schools close in recent years, and so they're kind of doubling down on keeping this side of the industry alive, which is really neat to see.
Yeah, it's difficult to the economics of building handmade frames is really tricky. And Paragon make, for example, they have a bottle boss that's £6, which sounds cheap, but you need 4 of those for a normal road frame, and 8 if you're making a gravel frame with a bento box and bosses underneath. And that's a lot of extra money to put in into your base cost. And then obviously you've got to spend the time to prep the tubes and then fit those things as well. So yeah, they've got an uphill struggle to maintain, to win the arguments for having those parts in your bikes, because they're relatively expensive, but they're beautiful. And it's really good to see. I didn't know about the frame building school angle, and that will mean people are coming into the trade and learning about these excellent components and learning about why they don't deform when you weld them and why that's important and why a cheaper version isn't perhaps as good. So yeah, that's really cool to see. Good news for a change, as you say.
Yeah. Other news or feel-good news. Meg, I want to talk about your community-based story that you did. Can you share with us what story you wrote last week that our readers really liked?
Yeah, so it kind of revolved around this small cafe in Windsor, which is just outside of London. And it came to our attention, this story, because a few British papers had kind of run these big headlines saying that this medieval town had been overrun by cyclists. And we were like, okay, what's this about? And it turns out it was this cafe called the Cinnamon Cafe was running a 10% discount for cyclists, or anyone who turned up in lycra. Could be runners, mainly were cyclists. And it turned out that this discount had been running for 15 years, so it wasn't a new thing at all. And I spoke to the owner of the cafe, Ian Jones, who kind of like through this conversation we kind of revealed the story of cycling in Windsor more widely. And back in the early 2000s, when he'd started this cafe, he'd befriended this triathlon equipment shop just down the road, and then they'd kitted him out with a bike. They said, you'd love it, like, got to get you cycling. So anyway, then he'd got the cycle bug, and then decided to kind of orient his cafe slightly more towards cyclists. And then so yeah, in the early 2000s, they'd got bike racks outside, they got a pump station inside, a puncture repair kit inside, anything that cyclists would need, they put in this cafe. And yeah, and so since then, it became the end point of this route that went from Richmond Park all the way out to Windsor. It's 65 miles, called the Bun Run. And some social media influencers in the mid 2010s had made a video, and it had blown up, and now it's become this destination for cyclists. And so it for some reason, it had, at this point last week, captured the attention of this paper. And saying this very explosive headline: overrun with cyclists. And it just seems like another kind of another point in this kind of obscure, arbitrary fight between motorists and cyclists. And it had focused in on this small town with this kind of baffled cafe owner at the heart of it, just being like, oh, we've been doing this discount for 15 years. So yeah, it turned out to be a lovely story, but yeah, it was a shame that it had garnered this much attention for that reason.
Yeah, that was going to be my question. Why this story and why all this attention? But is that the underlying cause? There's this tension between cyclists and car drivers in the UK.
It seems that way. It baffles me beyond belief, considering so many cyclists are also drivers. And actually, I think a town overrun with cyclists is much nicer than a town congested with vehicles. But yeah, it's entered the political sphere as well, this debate. This conflict, this manufactured conflict. Like back during our general election, one side was saying we are the party for the drivers. The other side was saying that they were going to be investing vast swathes of money into active travel, which never quite materialised. But yeah, so it's for some. I personally don't quite understand why it's such a divisive issue. But Andy, do you have any hot takes on the matter?
Well, I don't know about hot takes on it. I certainly feel it. It's certainly real. Like, I don't understand why we're all less patient with each other now. There is this sort of politic now that is, these dog whistle sort of politicians. It seems to be good sport. It seems to generate headlines. It feels like this Times article, I believe, was written by the person that created the furore around it in the first place. So it just seems bonkers, and I think it just sells a few papers, as they used to say.
On that note, shall we dive into our heroes and villains? I will make it mine short. My hero is Fred. We've spoken about him enough. I look forward to seeing him later this week. What you got?
I also have a hero this week who will be doing the Unbound XL. She's called Maddie Nutt. She's a British gravel rider. She won the Trekker 560 recently, and I interviewed her for one of our features in the magazine. And she's just brilliant. Like, she's autistic, and she speaks a lot about like how that has helped her excel in the ultra endurance side of her sport, and how she can just kind of tap into this flow state. And she's just fascinating and really cool. So she's my hero.
Cool.
Well, mine was, I've been trying to always think of a hero on this slot, and I failed nearly every time we've done it. I wanted to be positive about something, but I'm going to say the UCI this week, because they were overruled on SRAM's challenge to their gearing restrictions. The UCI have been providing advice to manufacturers and cyclists for years, and recently they've been trying to improve safety, and every single move they've made to improve safety seems to have been so half-baked and ridiculous at the time. It's given us lots of things to write about, and lots of people have been able to comment on it, and the discourse is all quite good fun. But for SRAM, they felt it was actively damaging their business and putting them at a disadvantage, and they've challenged the UCI in a Belgian court, and they've won. So it means the UCI has less teeth than it had before, or certainly the perception that it has less teeth. And I think it also means it needs to strongly rethink its approach to safety in races and stop thinking about the window dressing that looks notionally like it might improve safety, and look at things that actually could help and keep riders safer on long stages, hugely fast descents where there's no protection from the roadside, where Tom Pidcock fell down a ravine and may not have been found. Do you know what I mean? Those things need looking at, not gearing limits. So UCI's the bad guy again, but nobody at the UCI would be surprised to hear that, and nothing personal to anybody there, of course.
I would love the day that we name UCI as a hero. I wonder what that would take.
Well, I happen to think I'm in a rare position, because I think the work they've done to preserve the 2-triangle bicycle, the form of the bicycle, is excellent work, because we'd all be riding recumbents if it wasn't for the UCI's terrible restrictions, or we'd be riding P1s, Cervelo sort of P1 style triangle things. And I prefer, well, actually this one is a stretch, isn't it, behind me? It's not quite 2 triangles. It's a bit wackier. And UCI for years protected that shape of a bicycle, and I think they should be thanked for that.
All right. On that note, I'm going to wrap this up. Thank you all for listening. You can catch us weekly on your favorite podcast channels. And if you have any questions or topics you'd like for us to tackle, shoot us an email at cycling@futurenet.com.
Can I also do a quick shout out for our magazine this week, which is a Giro d'Italia women's special. So it's got everything you need to know in it ahead of the race on the 30th.